you talk about making chicken salad out of chicken feathers, and that's, to Kevin's credit, Kevin Sullivan was why I have such a high regard for him. He managed to maintain some ratings with a lot less talent. Now, people in North Tower don't understand what the roster was here and what the roster is here. And again, I think Vince Russo, who was an excellent salesman too, and Bischoff got into Brad's ear, and Brad made the decision. And Bill Bush said, "I know what this guy's about. I was here with him." And he'd been with WCW for 10 years, had a 3-year contract for good money. He said, "If you're making a huge mistake," he said, "if you bring him back, I will quit." And I think Brad Siegel thought, we need to, and prior to that, Brad would come in and say, "I want the next big idea. I want to know when's the next NWO. Well, sit here, like challenge you to come up with the next idea." And, put my foot on it. It's Brad, in the wrestling business, it's not about the next big idea. It's not like we take a script that somebody found a beautiful script somewhere and then we cast for it and we go ahead and produce it. I said, you're talking about wrestlers who you have to establish first. You have to give them personas. You have to make the people like them or dislike them. And then based on their natural skills and what they're about, then you create scenarios that bring that out. And that's what wrestling is about. I said, if I told you that there was a football player out at the University of Georgia who had a bald head, shaved head like Steve Austin, who never wrestled yet and got hurt in football, his knee was screwed up, but we think he would do good in wrestling, and we think we can give him this finish where he picks guys up and jackhammers them, and he's real intense, and isn't that great? And he would look at you like, what the hell are you talking about? You had to meet Bill Goldberg, you had to see it, and then it became an evolution. And Brad was susceptible to the sales pitch from the other two, and then they went from projected to lose $15 million to dropping blood by buckets from the ceiling, to setting cars on fire, to mashing cars in 2s and 3s. And by the time they were done, they were projected at the end when they closed the doors. It was reported to lose. At one point, it was $80 million, and then it got cranked back to 62. And when they closed, that's what it was, with another 60 projected loss for the coming year. And that's when they had the fire sale to Fusion. And you talk about Eric Bischoff and his ability, and I sat there for a year and basically was, like Brad Siegel, well, I'm going to protect your job, and there's people who would like to see you gone. But when they sent Kevin Sullivan home and paid him, and I sat there in the office and I kept thinking at some point somebody's going to say, this isn't working, and let's at least ask some questions. And Brad Siegel came less and less. He would scurry past my door, wouldn't look. His career, he messed up a contract. His career has had to go down the toilet. How he could not be held accountable for those horrific losses. He's a lot smarter man or knows a lot more than I do. It's inexcusable what happened to that company to run it into the ground like that.
What was that whole thing about when Vince Russo he shot on you and Gary Juster on Nitro? What was that all about?
Oh, that was the first day, and that weekend I get a call. TV was that Monday in Denver. Brad Siegel calls me at 10 o'clock at home. And he says, "I know you have a ticket to go to Denver," but he says, "Don't go to TV. Let me kind of sit down and see where it is." So I'm sitting there not knowing what's happening, and I watched the personal shots, which I took offense to. Now you could say, okay, I'm a public figure, so I really have no right to take offense to it. But I think anybody knew that's not what that was about. And it was a way of, and especially when that rating came in that first week, it was like, well, it was all downhill from there. And the losses were, and everybody kept quiet that there may be a buyer. And when Fusion was going to buy it, they never did due diligence, and the merger was about to take place with AOL. And so they sent a private plane to California to pick up the Fusion people. That night, flew all night back and had a press conference at 9 in the morning, hours before the AOL merger was finalized. The WCW was sold and all off the books. So then Fusion came in and started doing their due diligence. And I get a call one day from a woman vice president for Fusion in California who was an attorney. She said, I want to call, and I was referred that you're the one that I should ask by legal about these talent contracts and how they should be done, and kind of give me some information. And I said, well, I said they had a press conference which I was excluded from, and Fusion people introduced Eric Bischoff as the new president of the company and the creative director and the wrestling expert. And I said, I suggest that you go ask Eric Bischoff. And I said, I'm going to help you out. And I said, I want to tell you that when you ask him, he won't know what to tell you. He doesn't know the answers. And I said, I do. But I said, why should I tell you? I said, I worked up there and did all the payoffs and the talent structures and understand. And I said, well, why should I give you that information? If you want to hire me, we might have something to sit down and talk about. But I said, you know something else? If I told you the formula and tried to explain it to you, you don't have the expertise or the understanding of the talent manager of how to implement it anyway. So it wouldn't do you any good anyway. That was the first and only phone call that I got. And within a month, the deal went south. Never happened.
Now, you were the one that wanted to put the belt on Chris Benoit, right? Or was that a Kevin Sullivan move?
Yeah, Kevin, we both thought that was the right business thing to do. And there was if anybody could have had personal issues, it probably could have been Kevin. But again, Kevin, when it came to business, knew that at that time that was the right business thing to do and wanted to do it. It had nothing to do with trying to, break up a group of people that were going to go. It was the right. It would have been the right thing to do business-wise.
Yeah. What did you think of the whole circumstance of that had Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and Perry Saturn all leave, and Malenko as well, because you were right in the middle of all.
Yeah, it was regrettable. It was a power play that, if you can't control what other people are going to do, if you had caved and said, okay, Kevin Sullivan is out and you guys are here and now you tell us what you want to do, it was more of the same thing of inmates running the asylum. Bill Bush had no choice but to say, if you give me a mandate, you go. Now, it already fell apart because I think they turned on Shane Douglas, and he got left out. I think the one commodity of the whole group was Benoit. And I don't know if he was manipulated, if he felt a sense of loyalty to the other guys. Eddie Guerrero is a great talent. Eddie's had some demons. Eddie had some problems. He got some problems when he got up there. If Eddie can be kept on the right track, he's a great, great talent. And I hope for him and his family and his own health and well-being that he stays that way. Dean Malenko, I think, had achieved everything that he was going to achieve there. I didn't see him as a fit. Dean Malenko is probably as good a mechanical wrestler as there's been. But if you look back at the history of the business, some of the greatest money was drawn by people who, quite frankly, are not great workers. There's people that just say Hulk Hogan is far from a great worker. And there have been some of the greatest workers in the business who've never drawn a dime. The thing about Dean Malenko used to do things and make them look effortless. Great things. And you would look at him and say, there's not a bead of sweat on him. You don't see, you'd see him do something, but you would never see facial expressions or body language that would lead you to believe that what he just did involved this great effort. He did everything as if, and so you couldn't emotionally get involved with Dean Malenko. I like Dean. I knew his father, and I was sorry to see Dean go. Perry Saturn, Perry was hurt when he got there, and they gave him a job. He had a bad knee, and again, Perry was trained by Walter Kowalski, so I kind of had a soft spot for Perry, and Perry got away, and I think the rest is history. Again, the one diamond out of the hole is, as we thought it would have been all along, and that's Benoit. And Guerrero has been able to work out some of his problems, but for what they paid and how long he's been off, I don't know financially if he was a good investment or not.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.